I think of it in terms of when I was a teacher. Tried to think of my approach to learning as far as an acronym which I called INSPIRE. And the first stood for incorporating multiple narratives. And by that I mean thinking more just about two sides. First of all, there's always more than two sides of an issue, so I think that's just kind of arbitrarily decided. But also sometimes what we'll do is we'll have debates where it's about, you know, one side versus the other, but that's really kind of based on a fallacy of balance, that just because you have one argument automatically means that the other one is just as valid, when maybe in some cases that's not true. But the extent to which we can incorporate multiple narratives from multiple backgrounds, from multiple identities, is the more likely you're going to be able to connect with something of value to the people with whom you're educating. You have to nurture critical analysis. And again, it means that the learning process has to be more than just acquiring knowledge. It has to be more than applying the banking method, whereas essentially we open up the skulls of our students and throw in information and close it and say, you got it now, right? We have to not just teach them, but we have to inspire them and provide them with the tools to be more critical of the information that's out there. And now, more than ever before, right? But when I went to college, I didn't know what email was. They gave me an email. I was like, what is this? So this is not that long ago. But when I was growing up, if I didn't know an answer, I'd go to my dad. And if he didn't know it, he could make something up, and I didn't know any better. That was fact, that was information. Because if it wasn't in the World Book Encyclopedia, you know, that just sat in the living room, or my dad, you know, didn't know, I didn't have any other way to know. Nowadays, every piece of information is out there for these kids. I don't need my dad, I got Google, right? So it's not just about providing them information. That approach is obsolete. It's about providing them with the critical tools to be able to assess and analyze and make sense of what that information is that out there and what's going to make most sense and be most relevant and most meaningful to them. And then, you know, the S for me would be about stimulating perspective taking. I think democracy, a healthy democracy, is predicated upon healthy civic discourse, the ability to dialogue. And I think discourse in our society, and I can't speak for other countries, but specifically in our society, has broken down so much. You know, we have such a hard time articulating our viewpoints, but even more so, we have such a hard time listening. And we have such a hard time weighing the perspectives of other people in any kind of principle, but in any kind of decent-hearted and meaningful way. And so I think, you know, any approach to education also has to stimulate perspective taking. And it's also similarly, for the P, has to promote self-reflection, right? In that you can't just be someone who articulates viewpoints, but you also have to be truly willing to evaluate others and push yourself to say, well, what assumptions am I making? What is the validity of their argument, and what can I learn from this? The second I would be for integrating immediacy and intimacy. And again, it's got to apply, it's got to be personal, it's got to have meaning on an individual level, otherwise it's so easily forgotten. R, revitalizing agency. The process of education can be overwhelming, can be paralyzing, and a lot of times the more we learn, the harder it is to translate into action on a daily basis. And so as teachers, we can't just have the responsibility of giving information. And I know this all too well from my students. I wanted to push them. I wanted them to think critically and honestly about the world as it is, not just the world as they want it to be, but to provide them with that knowledge, the aching of the world as it is, and then not also provide them with the support and the love and the joy in order to stay awake to the pain and still want to go out and change it. That's not just reckless, it's unethical. And then finally, the last E, for encouraging activism. Because in the end of the day, it doesn't have to be activism with a capital A, but agency, to encourage students to take everything they've learned and not just be critics, not just be observers, not just be pundits, not just be people sitting on the sideline watching, but to do something with it, to translate all they've learned, all they've done, all they've listened to, and actually to translate into meaningful and transformational practice. So that would be how I would teach.